Hello and welcome to this concert by Cinquecento for the Boston Early Music Festival here in the Imperial Chapel in Vienna in Austria. I'm Tim Scott Whiteley and I'm sat here with my colleague Terry Way and we're just going to talk to you a little bit about the ensemble, about our programme and a little bit about the history of where we are performing today. Terry, over to you.
So the Ensemble Cinquecento that we are both members of was founded in 2004 here in Vienna. And at that time all our members were living in Vienna. And I met Tim at the school, the high school that I was in the final class in, as my English teacher, more or less, you could say.
Yeah.
And Tim introduced me when I was 17, 18 to this whole world of Renaissance music. And when Tim came back to Vienna a few years later, we decided to found a group together and got a couple of more singers interested and on board. And so we started with originally 6 fixed members, and meanwhile we've gone down to 5 fixed members with the option of inviting a 6th singer or even more singers whenever we need them for the repertoire we want to perform. And then consequently we were very lucky in several respects. First of all, we found a church in Vienna, a quite large, important parish, the parish of St. Rochus in the 3rd district, which was at that moment looking for a new church music director and ensemble. And because of the structure of their church and the founding date of their order, which was in fact in the 16th century, they were very, very interested in Cinquecento and simply decided to hire us as a group for their entire church music. And this gave us the fantastic opportunity of, first of all, singing regularly with each other, even on a paid basis almost every Sunday, and accumulating a huge massive repertoire of masses within the 16th century. And so that went on for a couple of years, and we just developed lots of routine in singing together and this ensemble sound that we have now. And the other piece of luck was that we got an amazing record deal, which maybe Tim can tell you
Sure.
about.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. You know, you speak to any ensemble and they will tell you that the most important thing, of course, is to be able to sing together a lot and to be able to practice and make music together regularly. So that was the very foundation of what we set out to do. But as Terry says, we were very lucky in that we recorded in 2005, I think it was, a demo CD with a mixture of different Renaissance composers, music on it. And just by chance, I happened to be at a festival in England and met one person who works for the Hyperion record label based in London. And we met about 2 weeks later, and they offered us a rolling deal to make CDs. And then, of course, we needed to have a list of program ideas for these CDs. And in fact, the most logical thing for us to do, being an ensemble that was founded in Vienna, was to focus on repertoire that was composed for the Austrian Habsburgs in the 16th century. And it was fascinating for us really to realize that no groups really had focused on these forgotten composers. And of course they were incredibly important to the Habsburgs at the time and for their empire. So we slowly amassed repertoire from that period from Austria, obviously many Franco-Flemish composers, and I think now how many have we made? Have we made 13? I think our 14th is about to come out, isn't it?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, okay, there we go. And of course having an English label which has a global reach in terms of distribution was very important for us and in gaining recognition for the recordings that we made. And actually international leads quite neatly into the next thing that we were going to talk about.
Yeah, indeed. So the problem at first was that we never really had management And so we had this amazing record deal, but we didn't really have concerts. And actually, it worked for us. It worked kind of the other way around than for lots of other groups, in that we had this record deal and made one CD after the next, and we started to build our reputation not with concerts but with these CDs. And that's worked quite well for us in the past years. So we started to tour more and have more and more concerts, even though we still don't have management, actually. But of course, also each of us sings in other groups that have a good reputation and sing at all kinds of festivals. And we always try to offer Cinquecento as a group as well, and that's worked very well for us. So we've been to most major festivals in Europe, and a couple even farther than that, like the Boston Early Music Festival in 2017, for instance, but also in Canada and South Korea and yeah. So, and also the structure of our group, of our members, has changed slightly. Some of us, Tim and me, and also Tore and Uli, have been with us from the start. Yep. But now I actually moved from Vienna to Germany a couple of years ago, and our tenor, who sings with us since a couple of years, Achim Schulz, he lives near Madrid in Spain. And so we still think of ourselves as a Vienna-based group, but we're kind of internationalized our members, which leads to the problems we had last year due to pandemic restrictions with traveling.
Yeah. Last year, obviously everyone who works in the music business just had their work disappear. And we, on the other hand, saw it, as I think many other musicians also did, as an opportunity to maybe focus more on recording. And in fact, it was something like 5 days prior to our first rehearsal day at the end of June that Achim was given the green light to be able to travel. So it was actually a stroke of luck, really, that we all managed to get together at the end of June last year to make a CD. And exactly, that brings us neatly to tonight's concert and the fact that, again, we are here due to the pandemic and we are performing to you via a stream and not actually in Boston. And indeed, it has given us the opportunity to perform in the very heart of Vienna, at the very heart, religious heart of the former Habsburg Empire. And so here we find ourselves in the Hofburgkapelle, or the Imperial Chapel, in Vienna. And Terry, you know this place quite well, I think.
Indeed, yeah. I sang here for the first time when I was about 9 years old, standing up there on the balcony as a member of the Vienna Choir Boys, who normally perform here every Sunday in church service, since 1498, I believe. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I know the place very well, but it also suits our group and our normal focus, repertoire focus very well that Tim told you about before. Mm-hmm. Because all these composers, or most of the composers that we've recorded on CD, were actually working at some point or another in this chapel. And actually, maybe surprisingly enough, for a group that's been based in Vienna for, almost 20 years now.
It is, yeah.
We've actually never sung as Cinquecento in this church before. It was actually very lucky that the church was free and they were kind enough to let us record here. So thank you also at this point to the Wiener Hofmusikkapelle. Mm-hmm. And also there's a nice bridge also to our next, to our CD that just was released, which is a CD of Heinrich Isaac, who was the Hofkapellmeister of Maximilian I. In Innsbruck, but they moved to Vienna later, and Maximilian I was also the emperor who is always cited as the founder of the Vienna Choir Boys, who always perform in this church. And that CD is, the main piece is the 6-part Missa Wohlauf gut Gesell von Hinnen, so keep an eye out for that. It should be available at the moment of this streaming.
Yeah, and I suppose one link to take from that new latest record, the Isaac, is that the Mass that Terry has just mentioned that is on that record is indirectly, or rather, yes, actually rather indirectly, linked to a chanson by Josquin des Prés, and that leads us rather neatly into talking about tonight's programme. The program is called A Requiem for Josquin, and that is for a couple of reasons. Number one, we are singing the Requiem by Jean Richefort, who is cited as a pupil, or rather a follower of Josquin. And that will become apparent in a minute as to why. But of course, 2021 is the 500th anniversary of the death of Josquin des Prés. And we are certainly by no means the only group honouring that anniversary. I think a lot of early music groups are doing, of course, the same. And quite right too. Josquin was a towering figure of Renaissance polyphony. He was the grand master. You think of the 15th century and you might think of Guillaume Dufay or Johannes Ockeghem, but the turn of the 15th to the 16th century was definitely Josquin's time. And I think, therefore, it made perfect sense for us when talking to Boston Early Music Festival to wish to honour Josquin's, the anniversary of Josquin's death. And what better way to do it than with the Requiem by Jean Richefort. Richefort has written this luminous, extraordinary 6-part Requiem Mass. And there's a couple of points in there that I'll just elaborate on quickly as to how it's linked to Josquin. Josquin wrote a chanson called Nymphe nappée, in which it's for 6 voices, and in this piece he builds a canon between 2 of the inner parts, and that canon, each part sings the words Circum dederant me gemitus mortis, dolores inferni circum dederant me. And that is the structural device within that piece, Nymphe nappée. What Richefort did is he took that cantus firmus and supplanted it into his 6-voice structure. And he then added other elements. For example, in the introitus, Terry, on the upper part, on the cantus part, he sings parts of the Requiem Aeternam plain chant, whilst this canon is going on. And later on, in the offertory of the Requiem, Richefort sews in a line from another Josquin chanson, the somewhat ironically texted Faute d'argent, which includes the line C'est douleur non pareille, it is sorrow without equal, which of course fits very well to the Mass for the Dead, the Requiem Mass. So there are all of these little intricate devices that Richefort uses as an homage, as a homage to Josquin. And of course, we couldn't let the program go without including those 2 pieces, the Nymphe nappée and Faute d'argent. And at the end, of course, as we always do with this program, we include Josquin's Déploration, his lament on the death of Johannes Ockeghem, Nymphe des Bois. So that's it. Thank you very much. I'll hand back over to Terry.
Yes, before we finish talking and start singing, I'd like to say thank you very much to the Boston Early Music Festival and Kathy Fay for giving us this opportunity. You should also know that all 6 singers that perform tonight, we are all complete freelance singers, and we are very, very happy for the opportunity to perform and to have work in these difficult times. Even though we obviously it's a pity that we can't fly over to Boston and sing it for the public in Boston live, but I'm sure we'll get the chance to do that in the future. So I hope you enjoy the concert as much as we will enjoy singing it. Thank you.
Thank you.